What's up, people? I put out a video recently talking about 5 things I hope to see in Pokemon Unite. Check that out if you haven't seen it yet, but one of the things I mentioned was that I hope to see the addition of new content to the game throughout the foreseeable future. By content, I mean things like new playable Pokemon, new maps, and new game modes. All of these are important for the longevity of the game, but in my opinion the most important is new Pokemon. Playable characters are the heart and soul of every game, especially online multiplayer games, and Pokemon Unite is no different. With Pokemon spin-offs specifically, adding new characters is even easier than most games because the list of potential candidates is already pre-written. So even though we've already got a great selection of mons to pick from, I thought it would be fun to theorize about what Pokemon could be added in the future. This is going to be my list of top contenders, so it will be relatively subjective, but I also think that the Pokemon I've chosen would be great fits and be well received by most fans. I'll be listing the Pokemon I would add and talking briefly about what moves they might have or roles they might fit into. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments below which Pokemon you would most like to see added to the game, and drop a like on the video if you're excited for Pokemon Unite. Subscribe to join the Tang Gang if you're new, and check out my Twitch channel with the link in the description if you're interested in that sort of thing. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's jump into this. Before I get into the actual list, I want to briefly discuss my thought process behind which Pokemon I chose. It's true that I picked some of my favorite Pokemon because those are the ones I personally want to be able to play with in Unite, but I also used some additional logic in my decisions. Specifically, I took a look at the existing Pokemon Unite roster and tried to cater my picks in order to fill in some gaps in diversity. For clarity, when I say current roster, I mean Pokemon that are playable in the beta as well as Pokemon that have been officially confirmed additions, namely Blastoise and Gardevoir. Credible leaks have come out for Zeraora, Blissey, Sylveon, and Greedent, but until they are officially confirmed, I won't be including them in my counts. And I am also only going to be looking at final forms for obvious reasons. The first thing I looked at was the current type coverage in the game. Now, I don't really think type diversity is something Tencent is going to be focused on down the road, but as Pokemon fans, we always want to see each of the types getting some love. As it stands, we actually do have at least one Pokemon of each type in the game. Here's the list of types with their number of current reps. You'll notice that there are some types with 3 or 4 reps, while there are 8 types with only 1. For this reason, I wanted to add at least one Pokemon with the Electric, Bug, Rock, Ground, Dragon, Ice, Ghost, and Steel types. The other factor I looked at, which I think will be even less important to the developers, is generational coverage. The beta had at least one Pokemon from every generation except for Gen 2. Blissey will patch that up if it's confirmed, but that would still only leave us with one Gen 2 Mon. Here is the list of generations with their number of reps. You'll notice again that some gens get way more love than others, specifically Gen 1 gets a substantial share, which makes sense, but Gens 5 and 7 only have one representative each. This is an absolute crime, especially since Gen 5 has such a large deck of amazing Pokemon, and the Gen 7 rep is an Alolan form of a Gen 1 Pokemon. And then Gens 3 and 4 and 6 have 2 each. Assuming Sylveon will be added, Gen 6 will get a boost, but 3 and 4 still need some extra attention. So since I'll be adding 5 Pokemon, I thought it would make sense to add one each from Gens 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 to optimally fill in the generation gaps. Speaking of adding 5, there also happen to be 5 roles in Pokemon Unite, so when assigning roles, I tried to give at least one option for each of the roles. Alright, now going in generational order, my first pick is the representative from Gen 2, Tyranitar. I think T-Tar is one of the most obvious additions to the Pokemon Unite roster. It's an incredibly popular Pokemon from Generation 2 that holds the Rock type, which is currently only used by Crustle. And it's also Dark type, which has just 2 representatives currently. Tyranitar is a long-time favorite Pokemon of mine for everything from its design to its Sandstream ability, which I think could have some pretty cool mechanics in Unite. It might work something like Alolan Ninetales' Snow Warning, which is able to passively aggro jungle mons from a distance, or it could slowly damage enemies over time when they're within a certain radius of Tyranitar. As far as a role, I would put Tyranitar as an attacker since its offensive stats are its main strength, but I think Defender could also be a good fit given its bulk. With its wide range of coverage moves, Tyranitar could theoretically be either a melee or ranged fighter, but most of its stab moves learned by level up are physical, so I'd probably go with melee and give it moves like Crunch and Stone Edge. For a Unite move, Tyranitar would probably unleash some kind of massive sandstorm in an area around it that lingers for a few seconds, damaging opponents trapped inside. Next up is my pick from Generation 3, Flygon. The more astute viewer among you will immediately notice that Flygon shares its type combination with Garchomp, a character already playable in Unite. While I don't love the idea of having two Pokemon with the same type combination, we already have two instances of this with Charizard and Talonflame, along with Mr. Mime and Gardevoir. Plus, frankly, I am sick of Garchomp always stealing Flygon's thunder. Garchomp got the Mega, Garchomp got in Pokken, and now you want it to monopolize Unite too? I say, no way. I love both of these Pokemon, but Flygon deserves the spotlight just as much or even more than Garchomp does, so I am putting it in the game. As it stands, Garchomp is both the only ground and only Dragon-type Pokemon in Unite, so Flygon adds an additional one for each to the roster. Unfortunately, given its stat distribution, I think Flygon would work well as an all-rounder, putting it in the same role as Garchomp. Alternatively though, I could see it as a speedster since it is quite fast and could even potentially make use of Dragon Dance to go even faster. Given that Garchomp focuses on melee fighting, I'd probably want Flygon to have some ranged attacks like Dragon Breath and Earth Power. In the mainline games, Flygon has Levitate, which Gengar has in Unite already, so it could be cool to have it retain one of Trapinch's abilities instead. Hyper Cutter could make it impossible to debuff Flygon's attack, or Arena Trap could make opposing Pokemon in Flygon's range move more slowly. And for a Unite move, I imagine Flygon taking flight and enveloping itself in sand, moving with increased speed and passively damaging any opponents it passes by. Moving on to Generation 4, my pick would be Froslass, which adds another Ghost type and Ice type to the roster. There are a bunch of good candidates from Gen 4, but Froslass's typing makes it a shoo-in for Pokemon Unite. Not to mention the fact that adding it would also bring in its adorable pre-evolution. As for a role, Froslass is perfect as a speedster since its speed is by far its highest stat. I could also see it filling a support role with moves like Aurora Veil, Will-O-Wisp, and Confuse Ray. Attacking moves for Froslass would be the likes of Hex, Frost Breath, Astonish, and Ice Beam, making it a ranged fighter. The really interesting part though would be its passive Cursed Body, which could have some crazy effects in Unite, like having a chance to disable the enemy's attack they hit you with for a brief period of time. This is obviously something they'd have to balance very carefully, but I think it could provide a very interesting mechanic. Finally comes the Unite move for Froslass, which I think could have something to do with its inspiration, Yuki-Onna. In Japanese folklore, Yuki-Onna gets a person to hug a child and then it becomes increasingly heavy so that the person is stuck in place and ends up covered in snow, leading to their demise. I think it would be super cool if Froslass had a Unite move involving hugging an opponent to trap them in place and then damaging them with a blizzard of snow. Out of all the amazing options in Generation 5, I ended up going with Ferrothorn as my pick. Not only is it a Steel type to fill that gap, but it's also probably one of the best choices in the Pokédex for a defender. Since type advantages don't exist in Unite, Ferrothorn no longer needs to worry about its 4x weakness to fire, which is often the best way to break through its wall. And even though it's very slow, it has a pretty solid attack, so it could potentially alternatively be an all-rounder. It would certainly be a melee fighter with offensive moves like Power Whip and Gyro Ball, staples of any Ferrothorn moveset. Its passive would obviously be Iron Barbs to deal some free recoil damage when it gets hit by opponents. And for its Unite move, I'd probably have it stand in place and lash out with a bunch of Grassy Whips or something. Maybe the whips pull opposing Pokemon in as a way of drawing aggro from Ferrothorn's allies, as well as keeping them close to continue dealing damage. The basic Power Whip could definitely be cool as a grapple too, now that I think about it. And finally, the representative I'd add from Generation 7 is Vikavolt. Given that I wanted to add a new bug type, there are only so many options to choose from. Vikavolt is a contender for my all-time favorite in the category, and it brings the game another electric type, so it was a perfect fit. Despite appearances, Vikavolt is horrifyingly slow, so Speedster is definitely out, and it's not particularly well-rounded or defensive. So honestly, I think Vikavolt could be a really interesting choice for the supporter role. Electric and Bug are two things that could provide some innovative takes on supporting moves, with moves like Thunder Wave, Sticky Web, and other status-inflicting moves. The alternative would be to lean into Vikavolt's high special attack and make it a ranged attacker with hard-hitting moves such as Bug Buzz and Zap Cannon. For a passive, Charjabug's ability Battery would be excellent for a support-focused Mon, boosting the damage its nearby allies dish out. For a Unite move, Vikavolt might play on its Railgun origins, trucking forward slowly in a straight line while shooting blasts of electricity out in various directions that the player can aim individually. And those are the 5 Pokemon I would add to Pokemon Unite as of now. Honorable mentions include the other Unova Steel types, Excadrill and Bisharp, and of course the one and only Magnezone. Is Steel type my favorite type? It's a close call between that and Dark, honestly. Thank goodness for Gen 2, am I right? Anywho, let me know what you think of my picks in the comment section down below, and don't forget to drop a like and a sub if you enjoyed. Keep an eye out for more Pokemon content like this coming very soon on the channel, and until we meet again, later people!